That film is on that note, because that's probably 20 years old, that surgery.
You're left.
We're live. Okay. So we're gonna film this. So I'm Dr. Jacoby. I know most of you. And a lot of folks here tonight have had stem cells. But this is really more about education of what neuropathy is. Stem cells just one of those regenerative solutions that we do. But I wanted to show you what I did for the last almost 30 years. And this is called the Dellen decompression, a surgical procedure. And this is maybe 15 years old, this particular patient. But I was taught traditionally that most doctors are all in this complex here, and we call ourselves allopathic trained, meaning we treat the symptoms. That's what we do. And then we've done that for 150 years. But regenerative medicine is an approach that tries to get to cause. What's causing this disease? And in diabetic neuropathy, diabetes, and the word says diabetes mellitus. That's the word for diabetes. That's a Greek word. It means to siphon out sweet urine out of your body. That's what the word means. So physicians in the 2,000 years ago, they made that diagnosis. They would notice when urine was on the ground, bees would fly around it because it had sugar in it. So it only takes 1 teaspoon of sugar. This is amazing. 1 teaspoon of sugar, which is 4 grams at any one time in your bloodstream. Anything above that is a poison. 1 teaspoon. The average meal is probably 25 to 40 grams of sugar. So we're eating poison all day long. So if your pancreas is working properly, you'll pump that sugar out of the blood, through the kidneys, and out. And if you can't do that, you're diabetic. And your nerves will start to deteriorate. And they'll slowly cook over time. So let's show the audience what I did for a living. I started on our house wound care center almost 40 years ago, which is a long time when you think about it. And I did the traditional surgery, cutting, amputations, things of that sort, treating ulcers, which they're still doing. But then I met Dr. Lee Dellen at Johns Hopkins, and he's a professor of neurosurgery. And I was listening to his lecture, and he was talking about this procedure that I'm going to show you. So he had a patient in 1984, and he fixed her the carpal tunnel, the wrist, and the ulnar tunnel at the elbow. And he did the surgery, and her feeling came back in her fingers. The pain was gone. And she said to him, Dr. Dellen, why don't you fix my leg? And Dr. Dellen said, well, that's a different disease. That's diabetic polyneuropathy. But he thought about it and said, well, wait a minute, maybe there's a connection. And after I tell you the connection, you're going, professor of neurosurgery at Johns Hopkins couldn't figure this out? Well, he couldn't. And it was like, I don't know what to do. But he was doing this surgery and this surgery. Feeling came back here. But it was so ingrained in doctors' minds that this is a different disease. It is not a different disease. It's a different part. You have an arm, we use homologous word, meaning it's similar to, but not exactly the same. So an arm and a leg, similar, but different. They have the tunnels, and this tunnel that I'm going to show you, this tunnel right here, is called the common peroneal nerve. This is called the ulnar nerve, because that's the location. So this nerve and this nerve, exactly the same, but the function is slightly different. That's all it is. But this procedure that I've done for almost 30 years now is still being discussed. Does it work? So I'm doing this for 30 years at Honor Health, thousands of these procedures, no amputations. They're still doing the old procedure. And we'll talk about that. Now I don't even do this anymore. We're doing stem cells. This is nuts. Absolutely nuts. And I think the reason is because we don't make the decisions. The FDA does. Owned entirely by Big Pharma. Period. Their stuff doesn't work, but it pays very, very well. And we'll talk about that. So, Grant, could you show this video? Put that on for me now. Of course. And that's the lead.
Okay.
Oh,
Now, I'm going to back. Okay. And perfect.
show that right there. So it moves, it walks, it talks. So I'll show it again. So that's the nerve in the knee, similar to the nerve at the elbow. Those bands that I was cutting, they are called fascia. And they are very thin in a normal person. When you eat sugar, and this takes 30 to 40 years to happen, that band gets thicker and tighter. So it's like a rubber band around the nerve. That's why you feel patients say it feels like there's a band. Well, there is. It's getting smaller and smaller and smaller, cutting off the blood supply and the nerve supply. And we call that neuropathy. The chemical reaction of sugar on that structure is called the Maillard reaction. And that's a cooking term. When you take like turkey, you cook a turkey, you put some butter in there and swirl around, put some sugar or whatever, it browns, it cooks. That's the Maillard reaction. That's what you're doing when you put sugar in your body. You're cooking your nerves slowly, insidiously over time. So the symptom you get in the feet is numbness, burning, tingling, balance issues, and finally an ulcer. And if you don't get that procedure, an amputation. But we're going to talk about regenerative medicine as a solution for that. Hey, Jim.
Be back.
All right. And so medicine and surgery go through evolutions. We as doctors are not expected to be free thinkers. They don't want us to be. This is the standard of care. Now, I'll give you an example. When I was in school in Philadelphia a long time ago, and a professor in physiology was talking about cardiac dysfunction, angina versus MI, and all that sort of thing. And I said to him, why is there a different name on the same process? It really is a process. And he was listening to me, and he looked at me, and you know what he said to me? Then it never answered my question. He said, "Do you want to pass the course?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "That's the answer," and went on with the lecture. Meaning, this is what we know at this point in time. You regurgitate the answer and you'll pass. If you want to argue, you don't. So shut up and do what we told you. And they're still doing it today. I always had a problem with that line of thinking because I'm in front of human beings every day. articulating these different symptoms, and everybody's different. Your problem is a little different than his, hers, and I have to adjust my thinking to that person. I can't just, this is what you're getting, gabapentin neuropathy. How many people had gabapentin or Lyrica? Yeah, everybody. So does it work? Well, what's the definition of work? Does it relieve pain? Yes. It works up in the brain, so you don't feel this process going on. And Lyrica, Pfizer drug, by the way, wonder where I heard that one before. They didn't make the vaccines, did they? Oh, yeah. So they made gabapentin and Lyrica, which is the same drug with a little tweak, billions of dollars. Does it relieve pain? Yes. Does it fix the problem? Absolutely not. And if you're on it long enough, you'll lose your leg. They don't tell you that. So let's, with that just thought in mind, let's run that video again. So you have some. This is the side of the leg. This is the one we don't
Now, I'm going to be fast.
This is now where we go. Now, Phillips in my ear so I can hear it. He couldn't move his foot before, and now he can. That's simple. That's all it is. No, I shortened it. That takes about an hour to do all the nerves in the leg. But that's essentially what we're doing. Pretty simple when you think about it. Still not done today. Very few people in the world do that. Oh, it's too dangerous. Too dangerous. You got diabetic neuropathy. When that nerve gets completely shut off, you then have gangrene and it amputate. But that's not dangerous. 150,000 amputations every year in the United States, 1 million worldwide. Doesn't have to happen. So we're going to talk about a little bit more detail in the slides, and I'll go through the biochemistry. I'll try to make it understandable, I hope. So the path has been a long journey. So I'm a podiatrist by training, as you all know. So I'm rebranding myself as Quadratus Stem Cell Clinic. And I've been doing stem cells for about 20 years. The reason I chose Quadratus, because there's this little tiny muscle in the bottom of the foot, right underneath the heel. It's called the Quadratus plantae. Plantae means the bottom of the foot. Quadratus is the shape, like a square. It's a little square muscle that assists all the other muscles in the foot to operate. And I always like that word. So Quadratus is assisting the body to operate in a different fashion. That's where they came from. So I came up with this RESTORE acronym, RESTORE, of the estuary. And these are two words that I applied to this disease. So restore the estuary is an important concept. So when we talk about the nerve, it doesn't matter what nerve it is, when that nerve is cut off, squeezed, it shuts off the blood supply, the artery, nerve, vein, and lymphatic system going through a tunnel. So blood cannot get in, nutrients cannot get in, but they also can't, the metabolites, after they deliver their goods, they can't escape. So that's the estuary that I call it. So think of the Mississippi River, right? Mississippi starts somewhere up in Minnesota, little droplets, and you got the mighty Mississippi, carrying nutrients originally, now effluent, glyphosate, a lot of chemicals, and it gets down to New Orleans. And right before it gets there to get into the Gulf of I guess it's the Gulf of America now, not Mexico. And there's a brackish tidal section, which we call an estuary. But if you're not from East or West Coast or that area, you don't really know that word from the Midwest. That's an estuary, a tidal that goes in and out. When the estuary is sluggish, then oxygen starts to go down. The fish die, parasites come in, bacteria, plankton, algae, to clean up the estuary. The human body works the same way. There are about 400 estuaries in the human body, all with a neurovascular bundle. So with that framework in mind, then I'll explain disease. So we're here to restore the estuary, and we'll go through all the things I think work for that. Next slide. One of which, remove. And this is fairly new. So this is a reverse osmosis water. And we have one over there. We just bought it just to demonstrate. And why is that important? There was a study just done very recently on carotid endarterectomy. Are you familiar with that term? When your arteries get clogged up and they clean that out. Well, this one study, they cleaned out the arteries. And of course, there was cholesterol, and we'll talk about that. And there was plaque. And inside that plaque was microplastics. And the people that had microplastics in there, 58%, they raised their chance of death in 3 years by almost 3 times. Where did those microplastics come from? They came from our food supply. They came from our water. They came from microwaving our food with plastic bottles, especially out here. Plastic bottles and drinking water, we drink a lot of water. That is a killer. So I was calculating, if you're doing 1 or 2 bottles of plastic water a day, you're probably spending $150 a month. These machines are only $350 with 99% pure. And they sit in your, there's one right there. So economically, it's a good thing to do, I would think, and you can unclog your artery. So that's how to remove something from your environment. That's just one of the ideas. So obviously sugar, microplastics, chemicals, and in my new book, Terminal Zone, I go through all that in detail. Next slide. So who asked me about the endocalcs? I think, Bud, didn't you ask me about the lining the blood vessels and calcium? Right. So if you take an artery and do a cross section of that artery and look down the barrel of that artery, you're going to see this. And you guys in the Navy, right? That grass that grows on the bottom of the boat, you got to clean it off all the time, right? I didn't have to. You didn't have to. Yeah. You're in that sheet metal plant. That's right. Played by whoever you sent down with. But see, doesn't it look like grass? Algae. That's, yeah. So this is the artery. The muscles on this side. This is the endothelial. I mean, see how these words? Endothelial glycocalyx. That's what that is. So when that's trapping microplastics. And we, in allopathic medicine, let me ask this question first. How many people are taking a statin drug right now in the room? 3.
Just got off of it.
Just got off of it. So statin drug is to reduce cholesterol, which it does do. That absolutely lowers your cholesterol. But why in the name of God would you want to do that? Cholesterol is most important. It's really a wax, but oil in your body. It maintains your electrical potentials in your brain and connecting all your nerves. Without cholesterol, we call that dead. Okay? And like allopathic medicine, so oh, cholesterol clogs your arteries. No, it doesn't. It can't. Think about this. If you took that glass wall there, very slippery, and underneath that grass, there's the endothelium, and it's like very smooth. As Dr. Cook taught me when I was up at Stanford, because I asked him this question, and he said, well, the endothelium is like Teflon. And when you eat sugar, it makes it like Velcro. Sugar is what causes that. Think about it. If I threw oil on that window, it would run right off. But if I threw sugar, and you all know the Greek word for sugar is glucose, which means to adhere, to stick. It's glue. So if you eat sugar and I throw the glue on the wall, then throw the cholesterol, yes, it will stick, not the other way around. So why would you lower cholesterol? Because that's where the money is. If I said to you, don't eat sugar, what am I going to sell you? Statin drugs, $1 trillion, not a billion, $1 trillion still going on. And they just lowered the standard last month to lower it to get more people on it. So keep that in mind. That's your tax money. Next slide. So these are stem cells. Now, stem cells, and the Spanish word for it, and somebody said that to me, one of my patients, and I was down in Panama and at Dr. Reardon's clinic. And he's from Scottsdale, by the way, but he has a beautiful clinic in Panama. And I asked him, I said, what's the word in Spanish for stem cells? And it's cellulose madres, which is actually a better word, the mother cell, the one that makes all the other cells. But this is where it gets complicated. We use that term stem cells to make our case, but they're really not stem cells. And I'm going to explain that next slide. So this is the restore protocol. So TM flow, and I think some of you in the room have had that. It's a non-invasive testing to see if you have early stages of diabetic neuropathy. No needles, it's very effective. Next slide. Nitric oxide, optimize the O and restore. Unless you can optimize nitric oxide, you can't get blood flow moving to the part in your body that you need it to. A lot of you have had red light therapy. That's producing nitric oxide because that wavelength is the same wavelength as the red blood cells. Now, that's a pretty simple concept. But Dr. Michael Hamlin, who wrote all the papers, who just retired about 2 years ago, he was at Harvard. He taught me that concept 30 years ago. Now it's catching on. Put red light on, the artery relaxes, more circulation. Next slide. And regenerate. So we talked about photomodulation. There's a lot of new technologies come along. And and we're going to be talking about some of those tonight. The next slide. And educate. That's what we're doing today. Educating people why regenerative medicine is good. Now, that's me at Mayo Rochester in 2011. Now, it might be hard to see, but I was there to do microsurgery. And that microscope on the left is a 20 times X microscope. And what is on the right is the neurovascular bundle of a rat, the side nerve. Can you see that structure right there in the green? That's what I'm seeing under the microscope. You can't see that. It's too small. I can see it because I had the microscope. So I think one of the problems unless you had this particular training, which I did, I say, can you see what I see? No, how could you? You don't have a microscope. I couldn't either. So I need to know what I learned at Mayo and Johns Hopkins and Harvard and all these different places to know what to look for. And with that microscope, I could see that. It's very clear to me what I'm looking at because I know what I'm looking for. But if you're a medical doctor, you're not going to do that. So he's going to say, or she's going to say to me, and they always do, what are you talking about? I said, well, come into surgery with me and I'll show you. Now, all you surgeons want to do is cut. They always say that. I said, all you medical doctors always want to write prescriptions. Your medicine doesn't fix anything. It might relieve a symptom here or there. But anyway, this is the old world of allopathic medicine. Several people here have had stem cells. And I want you to tell your story, the good and the bad, where they worked. Was it difficult? Let's go to the next slide. So let me tell you that that surgery we just looked at, that's Dr. Dellen. And he got his, he's from Johns Hopkins, but he got his PhD from the University of Ghent in the Netherlands. Why? Because he's so far ahead of his time. Average doctor doesn't know what he's talking about. So he got it there. He taught me that surgery, and he's correct. He's up for the Nobel Prize in Medicine, by the way, right now. Next slide. So, but I had to take it one step further. So I said, Dr. Down, you know, I like your theory. I've done a lot of your surgeries. It works 85% of the time, but I think there's more to it. And I said to him, and I didn't mean it this way, but it came out this way. And he just kind of looked at me and said, why don't you figure it out? Not really nicely. So I thought, okay, I'll take the challenge. So I started to read things out of my expertise. And I found this guy right here, John Cook. That's his assistant, Dr. Gaber, and he's from Ethiopia, by the way, China, and all over the world. He was at Stanford at the time. The Cook Lab is the largest in the world on this subject. And I read his article in 2004, and I said, and I texted him, which is the kind of funny thing to do. I read the article. It's like me. I text you and say, hey, nice article. I think it has something to do with this guy, Dellen, who you don't know. 2 hours later, he called me on the phone. He said, I love your idea. Come up to Stanford. Let's work on his molecule with my idea and see if we can unravel this mystery of neuropathy. And that was, I went up there in 2005, on and off. I did figure it out, but he said, why don't you just stay at Stanford and work with me and these guys and gals? And I was like, you know, I'm a clinician. I'm a surgeon. I like that stuff. I like rats and they're fun, but it takes tedious work. I said, Dr. Cook, I'll write a book. That's my first book, Sugar Crush, and let you real scientists figure out the science, because it's going to take 15 years. It took 18 years to figure out what I said was right. Dr. Cook called me. He's now at Baylor at Methodist Hospital in Houston. He is the head of stem cell research for the entire United States, #1 researcher in the world. So he taught me stem cells back at Stanford. Did I know what he was talking about? Not really. But I was listening because we were working on this other project. But he would, like when you have a conversation, like you're a sheet metal guy and everybody knows how to bend it right, but not left or whatever you guys do, right? And you're saying, you know, I have an idea that if you did this, that would happen, right? That's what guys do in their trade. That's what we were doing. And he said, stem cells are going to take over all of medicine. Now, he's a cardiologist by training. He's got a PhD in vascular biology. And he studies one molecule, asymmetric dimethylarginine. And that's what we worked on. And that is the first molecule that causes your disease. I'm not sure about you. And I bet you, but that we can test it. We know all this stuff and we can fix it. So when I did all that, and I thought, why am I keep doing surgery? And then about 10 years ago, I herniated my own disc in my L4-5. And now I was a patient. Total different perspective. Oh my God, because it dominates every minute of your day because it's so painful. So I did what everybody else did. Anything on TV I bought, just like you guys. That thing hang upside down. It didn't matter. I bought everything. Had epidurals. So my neurosurgeon friend of mine, he said, "When are you going to do the surgery?" I said, "Why don't we schedule?" I said, "By the way, have you ever done stem cells for this problem?" "Oh, no. There's not enough research." Oh, I said, "Of course there's not. Who wants to be in a double-blind study?" I said, "Why don't we do this? I'm going to," because my office is downtown, and I went up the elevator, asked one of the other doctors in my clinic. I said, "I'll mark the spots. You inject me." He said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, yeah, we got the freezer right there. I'll show you how to do it." He never did it. His hands were shaking. I said, "Yeah, I'll guide you through it." I would have done it myself, but it's too far back to it. Anyway, he did. And I was back playing tennis in 3 days. That was 10 years ago. And I went, "Oh, this is ridiculous. How does it work?" I didn't know then how it worked. How often am I going to have to take that shot? What's the dose? I didn't know. So then that's when I really went all in, stopped doing surgery, and this is what I do. It's really so simple. So let's go to the next slide. So this is diabetic neuropathy. You lose your feeling. You get an ulcer. You clean up the ulcer. You try to fix them. If you can't, you amputate. Next slide. And this is what I dealt with for years. That's the reality. Next slide. So in the old days, when the bones broke down, so we put frames on, put all that metal in there, and tried to save the leg. Well, we saved a lot of legs, but look at the cost and the agony. Can you imagine this? This is number one procedure today, right there, that I did for my whole career. Next slide. So then I met Dr. Reardon, and that's an interesting story. Dr. Reardon is from Scottsdale. I did not know him when he lived here. He left in 1999 when Bush said no more embryonic stem cells and made it illegal to use embryonic stem cells, fetuses. So Dr. Reardon's a scientist, PhD, and he said, "Well, I'm going to go leave the country." He went to Costa Rica, then finally went to Panama, and he developed all of this science with another fellow, Arnold Kaplan, which I know as well. So there's just two individuals, which I love their story because they're well trained in that profession, but they knew there was a better way. They took the risk, they took the punishment to push that through, left this country. So Dr. Reardon, I've been to his clinics, it's absolutely magnificent. It's a great country too. So his laboratory is there. Next slide. And this is actually how stem cells work. And this is the artery, the cross section. And on the outside of the artery, there's this little guy. He's called a pericyte. So think of like an amoeba on the back of something. And it has a tool chest of like 500 growth factors, like a contractor. So I kind of relates to the sheet metal guy. We're going to make something, right? And you got your tools and you got, all the stuff that you have. You get to the job site. What's the problem like with that leg? And these are chemicals. And when you get to the job site, these chemicals, they all have names. Like VEGF stands for vascular endothelial growth factor. There's that word again, endothelial. Well, I can see these guys sitting around going, well, God damn, it didn't work because look at the grass inside that artery. So you guys start to trim it up. I'm going to repair it chemically. There's about 500 growth factors. That's how stem cells work. They get a signal, they go to the job site, and they fix it. That's how they work. Next slide. So, there's another, that's what he looks like. It's that simple. They just have chemicals, naturally occurring chemicals. So where do we get these guys from? So we couldn't use fetuses. Well, they do work. That's how they have to work. Fetus grows from an umbilical cord, right? So the birds and bees story, right? And we got a little egg, and we fertilize it, called a zygote, and they say, "Wow, look around, attaches to the mother's uterus, forms an umbilical cord, like a life extension, and you produce a fetus. When you cut that cord, then it's called a child. Before that, it's fetus. After child, now it's alive, and that cord brought it to life, nourished it, and the covering on the cord is called Wharton's jelly. And all those little guys are in there. So as the child grows from infant to an adult, say 22, 25 years, it's using those growth factors to grow. And then once you're fully grown, then you don't need those stem cells anymore. And by age 50, you've lost about 90% of your own stem cells. So Dr. Reardon and Dr. Kaplan said, maybe we could use those Wharton's jelly material and inject it into the body for different diseases, which we're not allowed to use the word disease. We can use Wharton's jelly, but I can't tell you I can use it for like MS. I don't have the research. Can't use it for arthritis. Can't say that. Can I use it for, no. I can use it for, where's your pain? I inject it, these guys go and fix whatever it is. That's the law. So Kaplan and Reardon figured out that's what was in there. And it literally fixes anything. Anything. So why is it not front and center? Why is such a mystery? I use the word, it's called Pfizer. Next slide. So that led me into, when I was doing this research, to this class, and this is what it looks like. I'm tipping a finger. That's what it looks like in the cell. These are like little shards. Look how strong they are. And it's a much bigger problem than I really envisioned. So that's why I have the restore protocol. So let's say people do come to me all the time. They go, I just want stem cells. Okay, your A1C, your sugar is 11. It's not going to work. You got to change your diet. I don't want to change my diet. I hear that commonly. I said, well, it's not cheap. Yeah, they smurf. Well, I sold my ice cream business for $1 billion. Give me the shot. I said, you really should stop eating that and clean up your diet and do a lot of stuff before you get stem cells. You're just kidding yourself. Well, if you have enough money, you come in every month, but most people don't have enough money to do that. So you really got to change your diet, change your lifestyle, clean out these guys out of your arteries. And I'm shocked at the magnitude of this problem. So, but it's real simple. change your diet, drink clean water, get ultraviolet sun. That's hard for us to do in Arizona because that's between 11 and 2. I think you get burnt before you get the vitamin D. You sit out there, but you can get nitric oxide with the morning sun. That's red light, and that'll produce nitric oxide for your language. So if you go out for a walk, get sunlight, that's the same thing as red light therapy. Next slide. So this is a artificial vitamin D generator. I'm giving a talk this Saturday. And this gentleman has developed this. And I didn't know the vitamin D problem here in the United States. And especially here, I just assumed we got enough light, but we don't, because who goes out there in the summertime in the middle of the day? Not even the dog is going to go out there. So the average vitamin D is 38. I had myself tested, I was 38. But optimum health, you should be up close to 100. So there are supplements you can take, but he came up with this device, which is ultraviolet process you put on your stomach once a day, and it raises your vitamin D, but that's fairly expensive. Next slide. Oh, so I'm talking about this on Saturday at MedTech convention. This is a very busy slide, but let me just tell you what this slide says. This plastic surgeon from California. Now let me go back to sources of stem cells. So you can get stem cells from your fat. You can take it out of your bone. You can even use dental pulp, or you can get, and they're called autologous, meaning from your own body, or you can get them out of Wharton's jelly from some other baby's afterbirth, mom's afterbirth. That's called allogenic. Fancy words, but that's what it means. So a plastic surgeon is doing liposuction all day long. So he has come up with this machine. So when you're doing the liposuction, it gets filtered, washed, and collected, and they collect the stem cells, which is a novel idea. Fat-derived stem cells have been used for a long time, and they're your own cells. But I don't want, if I'm like injecting a knee or whatever, I don't want to have to go through a procedure, put the patient to sleep, draw the fat, go through this process, and then inject it. These cells are good, but they're coming from mostly people over 50 years of age, which means you have a very small amount of stem cells. So it's much easier to get them from Wharton's jelly and no hassle, and it's less expensive. But if you're getting a liposuction, say, hey, save that. You know, I got other areas you could put that. So that's being done. That's a new procedure. Now I'm talking about that on Saturday. So stem cells are unique. Stem cells work. And but the mystery around stem cell therapy is it's purposeful by the government to make it mysterious. We need research. That means we don't want to change because we're making a fortune out of it. And if you do that, and I'll get into the political portion of this, under Medicare, stem cells are not covered, right? So Medicare is a trust, right? We took our money over the last 40, 50 years, and we put it in the trust. So I said, you know, what was it, President Johnson? Hey, President Johnson, I'll put my money and you keep it there, and I trust you, you're going to keep it for me, right? Yeah, right. Now, 60 years later, I want my money. Well, we can't give it to you directly, but you can have some medical benefits, and here are your choices, like going to a restaurant. You got two choices, medicine or surgery. I don't want either. I want stem cells. You can't have it. Well, it's my money. Why can't I have it? Because I hear this all day long. Oh, that's expensive. I can't afford it. And I say, yes, you can. It's in your trust account. You just can't get it out of there. Put some of that money over here for regenerative medicine, all these kind of things, because it's my money and I want to do what I want with this stuff. Well, it's not FDA approved. I don't want FDA approving everything I do. I mean, am I going to ask them for this stuff? They're not going to approve this. To do a study on any, like if I wanted to do a study on an ankle, who had the ankle? Yeah, if I want to do a study on your ankle, it costs $200 million and it takes 10 years. If I want to do a study on your neuropathy, another 200, another 10 years. So every itis was 200 million in 10 years. It's never going to get solved because a individual or company is going to have to put that money up. They want a return, right? You're not going to put 200 million up and spend 10 years. And that's what they're trying to do. That's what Pfizer's doing. I'll put the money up, but I get to charge whatever I want under Medicare on this bucket. I said, no, over here, I'll take that risk. There's about 1 million doses of stem cells used in the United States every year. With blockchain, you could and you worked in that industry. You could take every one of those, put a code on it, a blockchain, track it. I use your lab. I'm the doctor. You're the patient. It's in a blockchain. No one can touch it. And in 1 year, you're going to have 1 million data points saying, my therapy works better if I use red light on knees, but not elbows, that kind of thing. And your research is done in 1 year. Problem solved. Put the goddamn money in my account. Thank you. So let's do questions. So we have quite a few people had stem cells. So let me ask Bud, because Bud's it's got such a great story. He lived in Panama for many years. 21 years. 21, which is funny. I mean, it's unique. And it is a beautiful country with beautiful people, and the food is fabulous, and the weather is nice. But he had a traumatic event there, and he injured his back. And that was how many years ago? 21 years ago. 21 years ago. And just tell the story. I mean, this relates quite a bit to you, I'm sure. So let me go back here, Grant.
My name is Bud. I lived in Panama for 21 years after I retired twice. And while there, I was walking across a bridge that collapsed. I was not in a car. I was walking on a bridge and went down about 11 or 12 meters. Panama is a Latin country and they're in meters, but that converts to roughly 40 feet. I went straight down into the river. In Spanish, the word is quebrada, and on a huge boulder, and I was instantly paralyzed from the waist down, thus the scooter. I ended up having multiple surgeries, literally not able to walk, multiple surgeries, therapy, rehab, and all that kind of stuff. And so 20 plus years later and living with level 8 and 9 pain in my back, I am now able to walk a little bit. Besides the scooter, I also have a rollator and I'm doing 5 hours of therapy a week. But tying this into the stem cells and why Dr. Jacoby is my angel, I also, because of my service, I was exposed to Agent Orange, and I have diabetes and hypertension, all the other kind of stuff. I won't get into all of that, but basically I had neuropathy in my feet, in my hands to a lesser degree, and then in my back. A year ago, it was either June or July of last year, I came to Dr. Jacoby because of the book that I read, The Sugar Crush. And it was just a chance call. I had connected up with Brenda. I live in Mesa, can I come and make an appointment? And I ended up having stem cell treatment on my feet as a test. And that was, I think, in July of last year. you have the records
Yeah,
anyway.
yeah, pretty accurate.
And today I have zero pain. I've had zero pain in my feet ever since. Given that, I decided to go for the big cherry in the sky, meaning to get rid of my back pain at 8 and 9 that I've lived with for decades. And so I had the first treatment in, I think it was late August. It might have been September of last year. First supplemental was the last week of December, and it was what, 3 weeks ago, roughly on a Friday, if I remember correctly. I had the second supplemental treatment of stem cells in my back. The 8 and 9 pain that I've lived with for decades is now down to, as I'm sitting here right now, a level 2. Sometimes it goes to 3, unless I do really crazy things like I've done a couple of times in my physical therapy, where I knew instantly I'd screwed up about 2 months ago when I was doing sit to stands and I got too aggressive. And I literally coming down, I plopped on the chair rather than sitting down, and I was almost paralyzed again. So I'm being incredibly careful, but it's stem cells that have given me a new life with dramatically decreased pain. And I'm now also talking with Dr. Jacoby about things like my research. Can I mention the glycine or you?
Yeah, he actually brought me the concept of glycine. And he said, what do you think of this? Now, can I tell some of your
Yep.
story? Okay. He's a diabetic. Your A1C was before glycine,
9, 10, and 11.
9, 10, 11. What is it now?
This is as of about 3 weeks, 4.8.
4.8. With medicine?
No.
No, so not diabetic anymore.
See,
My primary, may I say this, my primary care in the VAs, I'm 100% total and permanent disabled veteran. Okay. I also have Medicare, but my primary care doctor literally said a week ago today, technically you're no longer diabetic, but legally I cannot tell you that. Once you're diabetic, you're always diabetic.
Oh my.
so what does the word mean? Your diabetes is not a disease.
It's
There
a
is
con-
no such thing.
It's a condition.
It's a condition. If you're eating too much sugar, you got sugar in your blood. If you don't eat it, you won't. He substituted glycine. Glycine is an amino acid, and we have some here, and we'll taste it. He put me onto it. I said, no, that can't be. It is. Now, the odd thing is, I work with Dr. Stephanie Seneff at MIT in writing my books in the biochemistry of the microbiome. And we work specifically on glyphosate and glycine, but I never tasted it until he gave me some and I went, oh my God. I tasted it. It tastes delicious, by the way.
It has
And
a
it's
sweet
not-
taste.
It's a sweet taste,
Yeah.
and it's a substitute for sugar. He told me. And then he told me he went down, and I know him, and he went down in the 4s on his A1C.
He's got
Oh,
lab results to
yeah.
prove it. Yeah.
Metformin, all that nonsense. that
And
nonsense.
we are on insulin.
I was insulin dependent for 15 years.
Oh, boy.
When I got
Insulin dependent.
right, when I got out of the service in 79, because of health reasons, I didn't retire. It wasn't medical. They just dumped me. I was
I mean,
on
this
insulin
is
for
not a
15 years.
miracle. This is common
Common
sense.
Mhm.
So they tell you, okay, cut your sugar down and take this drug and that drug. And if we can't control it, we'll give you artificial insulin. Then you're done. But if you use glycine, which is sweet, that takes care of the sweet tooth without sugar.
Yep.
And all of a sudden your sugar goes down, your joints feel better, you feel better, you sleep better, everything's better, and it's cheap.
I do 8 grams a day.
Yeah, it costs you about 25 with straight glycine a month.
Yeah, $1 a day.
No, wait a minute, let's see. Well, that would be crazy if we took that and put that in that separate regenerative bucket instead of paying what, $1,000 a month in medicine and down to 25. That doesn't make logical sense. What would happen to Pfizer?
Is that pills?
we
or
here
Is that,
Sorry.
is that like a supplement?
It's a powder.
Yeah, we'll taste it. We'll show you.
Oh, okay.
So anyway, he's got a unique story. And Panama, Britain was right down. He lived in a little town. I always call it Bouquet, but it's really Bouquetti.
Yeah.
And mystical city.
Yes.
It's a mystical country. So, I mean, if you want to hear a story, you tell your story. So this guy, I wouldn't do any of the stuff he's ever done because when he tells you his story, it's
Like just chokes me up to think about it.
it does. And he's a funny guy too.
So I'm gonna start my story a few years before I met you. I had a right knee replaced, complete replacement of it. The other one needed to be done. I tried to talk them into doing both at the same time, and they talked me out of that, which I'm very happy for. But I went through all the normal rehab and everything with that. And fast forward a couple of years, I'm starting to get more pain in that knee. So Dr. Southwell introduced me to you.
Right.
Talking to him, and he said, I can put stem cells in, to help you, but insurance doesn't cover it. There's about a 50% chance it'll work. And I said, I will gladly spend $5,000 on a 50% chance not to go through 6 months of rehab. So 6, 7 years later, that knee is just fine. It was on the edge of having surgery. So I've had that done.
But tell me how you got all these crazy joints.
Uh,
You look at me, it looks like, yeah, okay, regular guy, but how did you get this?
Most of them from non-standard landings in a hang glider.
Yeah, hang glide.
Standard.
How many bones have you broken?
Oh God, I can't tell you. I think I've had 18 orthopedic surgeries. Well, like this ankle, I've broken twice. Yeah, several of them I'm a slow learner.
You're slow.
Yeah, but I'm not doing that anymore. And so,
I mean, major injuries.
yeah,
And then I saw you for your ankle.
yep.
And I said, I don't know if stem cells will work on this thing. It's pretty screwed up.
But it has worked on it.
Yeah, isn't it amazing?
Yeah.
So how does it work? I mean, it's so simple. I almost feel embarrassed talking about stem cell and all the science. Because down in Panama, the Spanish speaking country, they call it cellulose madres. Stem cells don't speak English. They don't speak Spanish. They don't know what you're even saying. They don't know what I'm saying. They don't know what the x-ray says. They just go to the area of inflammation and put the fire out. You can call whatever you want. They don't care. They're biochemical engineers and they just fix things. So, is there such a disease as diabetes? No. Is there a thing as MS? No. There are names that people put on these inflammatory conditions. Autism. That is the biggest crisis in the United States right now. And Stephanie Seneff, who I worked with on that biochemistry of glyphosate when she was in MIT. In my theory, that's just another nerve, the hypoglossal nerve. It's sugar, preconception sugar, inflames that nerve. These kids have delayed speech. Take them off of sugar, they talk. I was in Panama at Riggs Clinic, this diabetic kid, about 12, and I was in the cafeteria, and they had a lot of autistic kids. The moms were bringing them pancakes and orange juice and all of this sugar. And I said to this one mom, I said, is this your first time in Panama? She said, no, it's 30. Well, really? I said, why would you come back if it works? Oh, it works. I said, well, tell me the story. So she goes to Panama, kid cannot speak, gets an IV infusion of stem cells, and he speaks. And I said to her, I don't know why I said it. I said, what did he say? I actually blurted out.
Yeah.
And he said, I want a donut. He wanted sugar because that's the cause of this. Well, Dr. Jacoby, you're not allowed to say that. We're going to arrest you if you keep it up because you don't have the $200 million study. But I said it in Panama. You don't have jurisdiction. Noriega's gone. So
And the last part of my story is 6 months ago, I had a shoulder replaced.
there you go.
And I had stem cells with that and that. So I've had stem cells from my head to my toes. So I'm a big believer.
Yeah, and you have to do it. And that, the epiphany is when I had mine done, because I was doing it, but I didn't know how it worked. I didn't really appreciate like stories like yours or yours because I didn't live that pain. And I'm thinking, how does this work? And that's how it works. Does it work in everything? No, almost. But if you're staying a diabetic, I mean, you're still, that diet is not corrected. Yours is an amazing story. I've never heard anybody go from that down to that number. And you're doing terrific. So I'm trying to get this regenerative manifesto, so to speak, out there. It's your money. You should not have to pay out of pocket. You should be able to go to your Medicare fund that you put away from your hard work and use it for your own body. And that's it's disgusting that we have this system. And people have to just take charge. But as you get older, you get kind of worn down and you just accept things and they know it. And the younger crowd, like this age, there's not going to be any money left. So we're going to have a revolution. And I'm trying to start that revolution. So I'm starting this whole movement called Regenerative Manifesto with the Bucket Brigade. Ben Franklin, I'm from Philadelphia. He started the first fire department. And they took buckets of water to put the fire out. We're going to take buckets of glycine to put the fire out in America and make America healthy again. So your story, I want to hear your story. They want to hear your story. They're kind of a interesting guy, Navy guy.
Yeah, I was in '68. I went to Vietnam. I was Navy, but I went to sheet metal school, and right away I was attached to a Marine squadron in Da Nang, and I was a sheet metal mechanic by night and a door gunner by day. But I got Agent Orange real bad from being over in Vietnam. And so my diabetes, when I got out, I had everything. Well, at age 40, I was diagnosed with all the problems. And it's just been getting worse ever since. I have real bad neuropathy.
Well, let me back you up to how you got in the Navy. I thought that was unique.
Oh,
So he comes home. You lived in Huntington Beach.
yeah, I lived in Huntington Beach.
And what you went to high school there? You were surfing, having a good time.
I was a surfer. My parents had a house on the beach, so I grew up on the beach. Went to school on the beach. Part of our class was surfing.
Oh, man.
I mean, he's one of the Beach Boys, basically.
Hey,
So
And-
he comes home and it's during Vietnam when they were drafting everybody, and there was a letter.
from the Department of Defense, and I told my mom not to open it, and so I didn't want to go to Vietnam. So I asked my mom. Well, went right away down and joined the Navy, so I wouldn't, but I wanted the air wing. My
What?
dad was in the Navy; he was in the air wing, so I wanted to join. He was in World War II, and so I wanted to be in the air wing also.
And meanwhile, I'm back in Philadelphia in college, about the same age. And everybody in my county was being drafted.
yeah.
And I'm with a doctor friend who's now a doctor. I said, "What are you doing?" And he said, "Well, I'm going to medical school in Philadelphia." And he just said, "Well, yeah, it's not bad. It's you get a deferment." I said, "A what?" So, well, you're deferred. I said, "Where's that school?" I applied, got in school. and was deferred. So my path was into medicine. But the really funny story, he lived in Huntington Beach. I lived in Ocean City, New Jersey. Or did you have?
I had three, Hobie, Dewey Weber, and a Jacobs.
And I had a Dewey Weber. Isn't that weird? He collects cars, Corvettes, and he has a 65
Yeah, it's her 65.
or
She's
65.
had since new.
And I do as well.
Oh, wow.
It's not, I mean, it's just an odd story. But he learned sheet metal in the Navy, made something out of himself, very successful. We just did your stem cell last week, right?
Tuesday.
Tuesday.
Yeah, like I said, at 40, since then, I've had 4 heart attacks, severe neuropathy in my feet. And they just got done doing angioplasty on my legs because I didn't know I had that problem, and nobody else knew until I went to a neurologist, and they did surgery right away, took me in. They said if I didn't do it then, they were gonna be amputating my leg.
Oh, yeah.
So I got in the nick of time, but anyway, I still had a lot of pain, and that's why I came here, because I was living with in both legs, about 8 on the Richter scale there. And it was so painful, and so that's why we ended up doing stem cells. And within, I'd say the next day when I got up, the pain was 100% gone in this leg, and the neuropathy was gone. And in this leg, the pain was gone, but I still have mild neuropathy. So, but I'm hoping within time that goes away.
Yeah.
So,
But
Yeah.
interesting story, huh?
Yeah.
and
And I hear those stories all the time,
yeah,
but they're hard to relate because how does this stuff work? Well, that's what my books are about. So Sugar Crash, I talk about it. Unglued, I talk a lot about it. My new book, Terminal Zone, I talk about cancer and everything else and that estuary idea. And it's all resolvable.
yeah, my sister's always been 6.2, and I can't get it any better, so I'm gonna try what he's doing.
So
I'm interested. Yeah, that glide, yeah.
So-
Seen.
does anybody else have any questions?
Can I add a PS to mine, if you don't mind? We've talked about the glycine, but I also have cleaned up my diet. I also do the red light therapy, thanks to Dr. Jacoby introducing literally, religiously on a daily basis, 3 different devices. I'll mention that, and then the pulsed electromagnetic force therapy using a product by a company called Beamer, BEMER. That's not cheap. That's about $7,000. But I do the red light and the Beamer, the pulsed electromagnetic force therapy daily, religiously. So it's glycine, good diet, exercising, whatever, but being careful about it. And then the red light and the Beamer.
Right, and that's what I call the restore. You got to do all those things to, because this is an investment and you want that to last.
Yes.
So, yeah, great story.
Okay, thank you.
So we'll demonstrate the reverse osmosis, and we have some glycine here, and you should taste it. It's shocking. Like, where's it been? Why don't we know these things? Right? They don't want us to know that. Otherwise, you wouldn't buy the drugs. It's that simple.
Can I ask you one quick question? If we do RO water, does that mean the microplastics normally will flush out of our body, or do we need to do something else?
So that's a good question. The microplastics are going to stay in your body because they're in the cell wall. But there's 2 technologies, and I'm going to try to get that here. One is called UBO, which is, and I had it done just to see what it would be like. Put an IV in this arm. The blood goes through like a dialysis unit.
Okay.
It's oxygenated with ozone, and then comes back in this arm. But that just oxygenates. plasmapheresis, which is a term for separating the plasma from the red cells and then putting different plasma back in, might be the solution to what you're saying. Get the junk out, like changing your oil,
Okay.
right? So, and there are gonna be a lot of new technologies, all to restore our estuary. Clean it up. It's your body. And you can do it yourself. So let's taste this glycine. You're gonna like that. Excellent.